Pencils down, the trade deadline has passed. What did the Florida Panthers do throughout the rest of the deadline? And where are they as far as betting favorites for the Cup? We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this post-trade deadline edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at MondoMan12, follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. You can follow this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And now we can exhale, breathe in, breathe out, everything as far as rumors, who's going where, and now everything is done. And now let's ask the question. Can we just fast forward to the postseason, please, for the love of the hockey gods? Because I'm ready, and I hope that you guys are ready too, because this has been something that we've been anticipating since the Florida Panthers lost Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final back on June 13th, and with all the injuries that were listed at the time, and now the 16 games with no Montour Ekblad, the defensive structure that the Panthers have developed throughout all this. And best team in the league. And even with dropping last night's game to the Philadelphia Flyers, they still have they're still on their way to a President's Trophy. And let's just recap the trade deadline for the Florida Panthers as now the trade deadline has passed. As you know, the Florida Panthers do have one game under their belt with Vladimir Tarasenko in the mix. They're trading for Vladimir Tarasenko for a conditional fourth and a 2025 third from the Ottawa Senators. And other moves have been made for the Florida Panthers, but also 50% retained by Ottawa. But also, the Florida Panthers have traded for Kyle Okposo, captain of the Buffalo Sabres, for defensive prospect Kali Charlene and a conditional 7th round pick that could become a 5th round pick if the Florida Panthers do, in fact, win the Stanley Cup. And I tweeted this jokingly, saying that all is forgiven for Kyle Okposo after 2016, which, if you remember, he was on that New York Islanders team that won their first playoff series in 23 years back from their last playoff series win in 1993, which that was the year I was born. So that a long time for the New York Islanders. Signs an 7-year deal with the Buffalo Sabres, and then signs for one more just to continue building on for what they were doing as far as last year. But obviously the wheels falling off for Buffalo. He gets traded here. Lots of leadership for the Florida Panthers coming in. And it's crazy because during that time in 2016, it's one of those where you remember where you were when certain life events happen. And when John Tavares scored that game winner against Roberto Luongo, I've said this story before on the show. I had tickets ready for Game 7 in Sunrise, Florida, if the Panthers were able to tie the series at 3. And I just remember staying there, staying in my dorm in Parkview West in FIU, and just sitting there in silence and just in disbelief that the whole Trocheck was tripped game and all. But now Kyle Okposo is a member of the Florida Panthers. And we'll discuss more about what is the criteria of what Bill Zito is looking for in segment number 2. And also, the Florida Panthers did claim Tobias Bjornfoot off of waivers from the Vegas Golden Knights, a former first-round pick and big upside, and a guy who can skate well, played in multiple World Juniors for Team Sweden, and it brings depth to the lineup. And over 119 games under his belt, and at 22 years old. So lots of a little bit of experience there for Thomas Bjornfot. So lots of depth. And yeah, not every waiver claim is going to become a Gustav Forsling and get an 8-year extensions. Those are rarities, but you bring more bodies in, and you think about whenever there is a long postseason run, guys are going to get banged up. You're going to need those bodies, because think about what the bodies that the Panthers used in the postseason just last year. I mean, we're talking Colin White, Giovanni Smith, Casey Fitzgerald, and even Grigory Denisenko there for the Florida Panthers. And you're going to need some of those bodies for the Panthers. And once they traded for Kyle Okposo, it kind of looked like that they were kind of done with deals there. We spoke about depth defensemen, but hey, you're getting Bjornfot for free, and it also sends a message that you're really liking the defensive core that you have there for the Panthers as far as what they have. And it's a little bit of a mix of liking what you have, but still trying to beef up too at the same time, because we've discussed it as far as don't mess with what's good. But for the Panthers' sake, that makes sense for the D. But for the offensive side of things, where you're looking for more of a punch, which Okposo has more than 10 goals on the season. No, and you're looking at the rest of the bottom six, like Kevin Stenlund. Yeah, he has a career high in points, but you're not relying on him to get on the score sheet a lot. Ryan Lomberg, even now, it's a question of where Kyle Okposo is going to take his spot too. Also, Okposo is not expected to play on Saturday's game against the Calgary Flames. That's something that Kobe Guy tweeted just right before I went live here. So don't expect him in the lineup on Saturday. Probably his first game will be on Tuesday, when the Florida Panthers do travel to the American Airlines Center to take on the Dallas Stars. So that's when we could expect Kyle Okposo. And Kyle Okposo also joined ESPN's The Point in their trade deadline special and spoke about it's a great opportunity. You know what the Florida Panthers are going to give you as far as in your face brand style of hockey too. So that's another thing for them. And over 1,000 games played too. That means something. And familiarity with Evan Rodriguez, Sam Reinhart, Brandon Montour, and Bill Zito does love trading with the Buffalo Sabres, and his track record does show in his few years here too. So as far as that, you are having a bit of familiarity, and you're having a lot of leadership there for the Panthers. Also, some other transactions as far as the Panthers right before we transition over to segment number 2 is yesterday, Evan Cormier, who was playing with the Florida Everblades, signed a 2-way contract, and then he was placed on waivers, but he cleared waivers. And so goalie insurance in the pipeline. And also the Florida Panthers have traded Ludovic Weber, who they just signed recently this offseason, and a conditional 7th-round pick in 2025 for 32-year-old Magnus Hellberg, who was recently with the Pittsburgh Penguins. We have seen him in Detroit before. And think about every trade that the Florida Panthers have shipped out for during this trade deadline. No roster players, and every single round that that as far as assets that they traded for were rounds 3 to 7 too. Oh my God, that's I'm a loss for words of how Bill Zito pulled this off. Also, you think about the power that some of these players have as far as their clauses and what they use that power in their contract, which is their right to get to where they want to go. And unfortunately, the Panthers didn't get Max Pacioretty, but who can score 30 goals, who did score 30 goals multiple times in his career and is on the older side. I mean, yeah, Kyle Okposo is on the older side too, but you see the different qualities that each player has. And with Okposo, you have someone who who has taught a young team what it's like to be a professional. And now he's going on a veteran team that has so many aspirations as far as trying to win the cup. And also, the draft is a crapshoot anyway. I believe I'm not sure the exact stat, but for picks, for draft picks after pick 20, their likelihood of playing over 100 NHL games is really low. So basically, you're giving shots at a dartboard, some darts over to other GMs, and and likely they're going to use those to flip for other players too. It's not every day that you're going to see a Mackenzie Weegar, a Zach Hyman, or even an undrafted guy like Sergei Bobrovsky too. So it's not going to be, we're not going to see that often for in the NHL. So, and I put out a poll out on X on the grades that you guys gave Bill Zito as far as this trade deadline. I'm going to recheck it again right before transitioning to segment number 2. 65% of you guys gave Bill Zito an A for this trade deadline, and I'm in full agreement. That's it. That's the trade that I give him. That's the grade, excuse me, that I give him for this trade deadline. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more of Bill Zito's criteria. What is it as far as what he is looking for? We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 options to choose from every week, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Also, there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long. What are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. With 2-minute meals, fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant quality meals that are ready to heat and eat whenever you are. Pancakes, smoothies, and more. Discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. No prep, no mess meals. Factor meals are ready to eat and eat, so there's no prepping, cooking, or cleanup needed. Factor is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required. Sign up and save. We've done the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 and use code LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. That's code LockedOnNHL50 at factormeals.com/LockedOn to get 50% off. Segment number 2 here on this post-trade deadline edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday post-trade deadline edition. Hold on, I gotta take a quick sip of water right before continuing here. So the trade deadline and what Bill Zito is looking for as far as criteria and what his track record has been during his time as general manager of the Panthers. I mean, we've seen him get multiple first round picks in the building. I mean, we've seen Sam Bennett, we've seen Brandon Montour, we've seen Sam Reinhart, and latest with Tobias Bjornfoot too, and Kyle Okposo. He was the 7th overall pick for the New York Islanders back then, and all. And also, let's not forget that 2 seasons ago during the trade deadline, when he sold the farm for Claude Giroux, he had the C when he was with the Philadelphia Flyers. And now having Kyle Okposo, we spoke about earlier that he has mentored young guys there. And this is what a little bit of what Zito said during the trade deadline special on ESPN. He said, quote, "It's so valuable because you're bringing in leadership, not only necessarily in the form of individual leaderships for that person, but guidance and support and understanding of the other leaders. Maybe I do so, and maybe not do something that's going to help you, and that's invaluable." Close quote. And think about this: leadership styles, which we all have seen. Alexander Barkov, not the most vocal of guys, but and is more of a person who just goes out there and lets his play show for him. But now you have another leader in your locker room who might say something, not say something as a form of what the locker room not liking or not, but also keeping the guys accountable in the room. And that's what you need when bringing a guy like Kyle Okposo into the mix too. So that is hella key for the Florida Panthers. And once again, you think about with this team for what their ceiling is. I mean, ceiling. I mean, we saw Game 5 of the Stanley Cup last year. Ceiling is winning it all and lifting Lord Stanley's cup, and Gary Bettman saying, Alexander Barkov, please come get the cup, and hopefully skating around, which we hope that it's at home at Emirates Bank Arena. But hey, we still have 18 games to go and a postseason run before we can even get there. But I mean, you think about where they've come and the aggressiveness. We've never seen any type of aggressiveness like this prior to 2022. And now that it's manifesting on the ice, you have a coach too that has the experience. I mean, up and down the roster. I pose this question not only for Panther fans, but I pose this question also for listeners who maybe happen to be dropping by from other NHL fan bases. That when you look at up and down the roster, what as far as on paper, what is the best team on paper? And I'm just looking up and down and seeing and looking at the Panthers. I mean, it's really hard to say that the Panthers are not that team when it comes to that. And I'm still feeling in that incredible energy from Thursday, even though they lost, because of what was presented in 2000's night. Like I said, it was a night of celebration and a night of just how they have overcome what they overcame throughout multiple ownership changes and the relocation rumors that the Florida Panthers have come their way, especially the fans. I mean, credit to you guys out there who have just stuck through this. And now for the Panthers, they have that opportunity, and it's not just for this year. There's going to be a slight rise in the cap. Maybe lose Brandon Montour because and actually, let's get to Brandon Montour because Bill Zito was asked about that today during his interview on The Point, and I'm going to pull up the quote that I tweeted earlier and saying when asked about possible extension with him, and he says, quote, "One day at a time. The goal is to try to keep the core together. At the same time, be respectful that people have to make individual decisions," close quote. And honestly, I don't think any of us, and here's the thing, I'm not going to tell you guys how to fan. You guys fan however you want. But for me, I want someone to take care of their family. I want them to provide security and possible generational wealth if they're able to. And this is that opportunity for Brandon Montour and his family. And if he's able, and if he feels comfortable, if he personally feels comfortable taking less and to win and to sacrifice a little bit of cash for winning, good for him. He's dealt with losing situations in Anaheim and Buffalo. But I don't know if a lot of national insiders and even fans anticipated his game to even explode to the point where he set the record for most points for a defenseman in a season. So, but we gotta be respectful as far as that. And also, he did get a question on Vladimir Tarasenko as well, and just continue on saying that quote, we envision him contributing in the top 9 group. Vladdy can come in and use his hockey sense because his scoring ability is offensive ability, close quote. So that is as far as the newest addition as far as the Florida Panthers. And those are really the guys who are going to be part of the group night in and night out for the rest of this season, at least, because for Bill Zito, I was never, the expectation, at least for me, was never that he was going to go after someone with multiple years left on his contract, because Forsling is already signed, and honestly, I haven't even looked ahead at the available cap space past this year. I'm as you can tell, I'm very laser focused, tunnel vision, just looking ahead to get for this team to get their game right, get not necessarily get the best seeding. Yeah, the Panthers are on track to winning the Atlantic Division, and even if they fall to number 2 and face the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round, I'm very confident that with the blue line that the Toronto Maple Leafs have, even though they made some improvements with Ilya Lyubushkin and Joel Edmondson, that I think that the Panthers can take them in a 7-game series. Once again, do they want Florida? Ask the Leaf fans if they still want Florida, but that's neither here nor there. But also Boston, you've proven that you can win on the road multiple times. Three out of those 4 games you won. You won at TD Garden. So you have so many different. There's so many. The proof is in the pudding of what the Florida Panthers have done on the road throughout last season and even this year with the best road record. I mean, still crazy to believe that when you look at the splits between home and away, that the Panthers are just continuing to just win on the road. I mean, no environment faces them too. So it's gonna be interesting to see as far as what's gonna come for the Florida Panthers, as they will have home ice for at least the first 2 rounds. At least it's on track for that, because they still have a game in hand on the Boston Bruins, who I believe they play Pittsburgh tomorrow at 3 p.m. An hour right before the Florida Panthers take the ice against the Calgary Flames. So gonna keep a bit an eye on that matchup, as Boston should win that one, as the Pittsburgh Penguins did sell Jake Gensel to the Carolina Hurricanes, which the Carolina Hurricanes, they bolstered up their lineup after the trade deadline. But that is a good reason to transition over to segment number 3 to discuss where the betting odds now look for the Florida Panthers, now after they made all of their deadline moves, and now that they are done. We are going to discuss that and more here on Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And no matter how the last game went, anytime you take the ice, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessment, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates with resumes that match your job description. Indeed makes it easy to hire great talent. According to ComScore, Indeed is the #1 site worldwide, and Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now you can find it on Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Sports Today covers the biggest stories from every sports and the local experts covering every team. Follow Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and on the free Fire TV channels app. Third and final segment here on this post-trade deadline edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And also, I want to thank you all for joining me live on the YouTube. I see all of your comments. Thank you so much for the support on the channel. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all. And also, if you guys, if you haven't subscribed already, if you're listening to this on audio, please, if you want, no pressure, please subscribe on the YouTube as well. But also follow the show account on X and Instagram at @LO_FLA Panthers. But let's look at the betting odds for the Florida Panthers as far as now what it looks like post trade deadline. And this is according to ESPN Bet. And the Panthers, they are the favorites as far as the betting odds at plus 700. So for those who don't gamble, $100, if you were to put that down, will put you at 700. And I did get a comment earlier today that right before the beginning of the season, it was plus 2,200 for the Florida Panthers right before game one of the season. And you can understand why for the Cats, because I will admit, prior to the season, with the injuries on the blue line, I was not sure where this team was going to go with the little bits of turnover, but I always said there was that opportunity for the depth to be better when you have Ekman Larsson playing on the first pair and Forsling together, and some power play time too there. So but I was always err on the side of caution for the Cats prior to game one of the season. But the other teams that are behind the Florida Panthers as far as betting odds, the Edmonton Oilers are plus 750, who recently traded for Adam Henrique and longtime Duck Sam Carrick. The Boston Bruins are also up there as far as third at plus 900, who they just got Pat Maroon, and they're also trying to unload Linus Ullmark to the Los Angeles Kings, but he did not want to go out there, which you got to respect the players' ability as far as their clauses in their contract. The Carolina Hurricanes, they're an interesting one because Evgeny Kuznetsov got traded there. He was placed on waivers, sent down to Hershey, and didn't even play a game there, but then traded for 50% salary retained for Washington. They were that desperate to get rid of his contract, and they're going to eat up $3 million this year and next. And he's a proven goal scorer in the postseason. I mean, we saw it with the Washington Capitals back in 2018 when they won the Cup over Vegas. So proven scorer, and Jake Gensel, which Nick and I were talking off camera after our episode on Friday. It's more of quality, not quantity, not quality for Kyle Dubas. I mean, Michael Bunting, he's a player that Dubas had in Toronto, so a little bit of a reunion there for the Carolina Hurricanes. Colorado Avalanche, they unloaded the contract of Ryan Johansson, brought in Casey Middlestat to the mix as well. So that is a mix as far as their top as their forward groups that it has been bolstered up too. The New York Rangers, they finally made the trade for Alex Wenberg, who's going to be who is projected to be on the fourth line at plus 1,000. Dallas Stars, they traded for Chris Tanev, who can right-handed shot, can block shots too. And weirdly, I'm surprised the Vegas Golden Knights weren't higher because for some reason, they were able to pull off the trade for Thomas Hertl with 6 years left on his deal. I haven't looked at the full trade details, but I believe the San Jose Sharks are retaining salary too, and they're getting a boatload of picks too. They already traded for Noah Hannafin and all, which, by the way, Speaking of Noah Hannafin, who he originally wanted to go to Tampa, but the Tampa Bay Lightning, they traded for Matt Dumba, and there was rumors saying that he was going for a first, and he ended up going for a fifth. So just goes to show what the market is looking like as far as that. And with Mikhail Sergachev being out for the season, you need, just like the Panthers needed some insurance, the Tampa Bay Lightning also needed theirs as well. So that's a little bit of the betting odds for the rest of the NHL. But it's great to see that for the Panthers, that they have made these moves as far as the insurance for them, as far as getting the bodies too. So that is the luxury there, as far as continuing to just that pursuit of winning Lord Stanley's Cup, as far as getting guys with experience and getting guys who have proven over and over again that they are bought into what is being sold. And destination franchise, that it's that word that we keep using often here. And it was even said on the broadcast once again. Bill Zito has said it. Maurice has said it. So why not? I will gladly beat the dead horse when it comes to South Florida and being that franchise, because even though there's already an extension for Gus, and even if Montour walks, there could be that signing coming out of nowhere, that of someone taking less to play to want to come to a cup contender. So but again, you get your wins first, and everything follows after that, which it's more than just ownership with a financial investment. It's an emotional one too. And listen, we could hate Vegas all we want, but that ownership will do what it takes to win. And I compare, this is a strange comparison, but or strange analogy. It's like when you get a tattoo for the first time, you want more and more and more after that. It's the same thing with winning. So you can't necessarily blame them for wanting an opportunity to get more and more hardware. I mean, not necessarily more hardware, because you don't keep the cup, but you guys get what I mean as far as obtaining it again. So it's gonna be fun. But I wish that it were April 22nd right now, so that we can just get to game one and just go on another ride of, also, at least for me personally, in my experience, the adrenaline rush that comes with it, something that we live for. We live for times like this. And I'm sure there's a song, there has to be a song that goes like that. I used to pray for times like this. I forget who it's by, but you guys in the comments, you can tell me who that artist is. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day on this post trade deadline edition of the show. We will be back with you guys on Monday, and maybe we will be discussing hopefully another win, and hopefully more of, as Kyle Okposo will be ready to make his Panthers debut next week, which he will be wearing number 8, by the way. That's some news here on the show. That's what his sweater number will be for the Florida Panthers. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So Armando Velez signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.